Hi there, and welcome to the AnitaCHAT podcast. I'm your host, Anita Rombo, and this is the podcast for growth-oriented women to have authentic, real talk. Nothing is off the table here, but as an intuitive self-relationship coach, you'll find the content gravitates towards mindset, intentional action, spirituality, and all things wellness. So if you're ready to learn, laugh, show up, and glow up to be the best version of yourself, grab your favorite bevy, settle in, and we've got lots to chat about. Hello friends, and welcome to this episode of AnitaCHAT. Today's episode is all about boundaries. We all have them, we all need them, and many of us feel some discomfort around setting them. But I promise you, it is worth all the discomfort, and it's actually healthy. So let's dive into them a bit more, shall we? To start, let's talk about what they are. Boundaries are a set of parameters or limits that we prefer to operate within in our life. And they are important because operating within these limits makes us feel safe, happy, and protected. We are worthy of honoring and prioritizing our happiness and need for safety and protection. Our boundaries help us to create that supportive environment for our health, well-being, and growth. Boundaries can come in many different forms. When I think of boundaries, I often think of a fence, clearly marking a territory of what or who is invited in and what or who is not. But that boundary doesn't necessarily have to be physical. We could also have boundaries related to our time, our energy, emotions, and what we choose to share with others. For example, one of my biggest boundary pet peeves is lateness. I hate it when people waste my time. I have so much on the go and my day is pretty structured and organized. So when I allocate some time to meet a friend and they keep me waiting for over 10 minutes, I really don't appreciate it. If a person violates this boundary often, then I usually cut them off with love, recognizing that they aren't my people. I have a friend that I absolutely love as a human, but can't make any plans with for this precise reason. She is notoriously hours late anytime we plan something. In my case, this boundary isn't about safety, but it is about protection of my time, which I think is already in short supply. Some of the boundaries we set are unspoken. For example, people often prefer a certain distance between themselves and the people they are talking to. Think of being in an elevator, for example. You'll notice that with each person coming into or leaving an elevator, people will naturally shift their positioning around to create this unspoken bubble of space between everyone. I've never had a conversation with the strangers in the elevator about what we are doing. It's just something we do. We all just naturally shift around. As another example, have you ever had a conversation with a person that is a close talker? You'll notice that the person having the conversation with a close talker will keep inching back to create some space, and the oblivious close talker will likely keep inching further because they have no clue. For some reason, I feel like there may have been a Seinfeld episode featuring this. So clearly those close talkers didn't get the personal space memo. Side note, if there are any close talkers tuning in, take note and give the rest of us some breathing room. Like the close talkers, some boundary violations can be unintentional. Now, when I say violation, I'm referring to the fact that someone has crossed that imaginary line or limit that you prefer. Anyone have their belly rubbed when they were pregnant by a coworker, a stranger, a family member, or anyone really? I know that the person doing the belly rubbing is showing their excitement and joy for you, but for some, it can be downright uncomfortable to be on the receiving end of this gesture. Other times, boundary violations can be intentional. For example, when after having a heated discussion, someone asks for space and the other person disrespects this request and wants to continue the conversation. This happens with me and my husband from time to time. We just communicate and process differently. For him to process, he prefers to take some time and think things over. For me to process, I prefer to verbalize and think out loud. Despite my wanting to keep going if we're having a heated conversation, I have to remind myself of his boundaries and pull back and wait for him to approach me when he is ready to continue our chat. I find the silence uncomfortable, but I know that this is a boundary of his, and out of love and respect for him, I accept it. As social creatures, we all crave love and belonging because we are constantly relating to one another, and because all of us have our own set of boundaries that keep us comfortable. It is so important for us to articulate what our boundaries are. It is up to us to let people know what we will and will not tolerate, so they know how to interact with us. We can't assume that they know what our boundaries are or that they have the same ones in place. With so many different preferences, we can't hold them responsible if they infringe if we didn't let them know they were overstepping in the first place. We are only as strong as our weakest boundary, and that includes setting and maintaining them. Our dynamics that we have with others is influenced by the boundaries that we have in place with them. At any given time in family, friend, and professional relationships, we have the power to set and enforce what feels comfortable for us and vice versa. Our relationships are based on this intricate balance of operating within our mutual boundaries. It may not always be easy, and we will address that shortly, but it is within our power and locus of control. So now that we know what boundaries are and why they are so important, what about them makes us feel so icky? Firstly, many things that we know are good for us are not necessarily things we look forward to, such as exercise, drinking 2 liters of water, washing makeup off our face at night, but we still do them anyways because we recognize that it's a part of adulting. But all seriousness aside, boundary setting and maintaining can be difficult for us on so many levels, especially if you're a yes person, a people pleaser, an ex-codependent. And as someone that was raised to be all of those things, I pride myself on fixing things, seeking approval, and maintaining harmony at all costs, even if it meant putting my needs last. Truth be told, I didn't even think about boundaries, much less set and enforce them. It wasn't something that was modeled for me. I've come a long way since then. I may have even swung over to being over-boundaried if there is such a thing. I think boundary setting is also more difficult for women because I think we fear being mean or hurting others or confrontation. We may choose as peacekeepers and nurturers to keep quiet and have others infringe on our boundaries instead. Even the way we were brought up as kids may have something to do with why setting boundaries is so difficult for us now. I distinctly remember hugging Indian aunties that were pretty much strangers out of respect and saying Namaste Ji, our Hindu greeting you may be familiar with from yoga studios. There was no questioning the practice. It was just something polite Indian children did when going to an Indian gatherings or functions. Nowadays, parenting has changed. There is this thing that we teach children called stranger danger. My 5-year-old doesn't say hello to people she knows half the time, and she sure as hell doesn't dole out hugs freely. She sticks to her boundaries unapologetically, and it's one of the things I love about her. Suffice it to say, setting and maintaining boundaries can be difficult and make us feel uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. We feel mean, selfish, bossy, bitchy, and possibly even guilt. If you're a people pleaser, yes person, someone who likes harmony and is non-confrontational in nature, then setting boundaries may seem like it's going against the very essence of these characteristics. If you're setting boundaries on something you may have accepted in the past, it may seem like an abrupt change to the status quo, and this may spark some difficult conversations or judgments about you that you would probably rather avoid. It may also potentially offend people and alter relationships forever. However, the way I look at it is if you show others how you want to be treated and that can't be respected, perhaps as an extension of self-love, you should reconsider the role those people play in your life. If they adapt, great. Your relationship can move forward and evolve in a manner that is healthy and nurturing for you both. And if they can't accept it, well, then that's their loss. And I know that's easier said than done, and sometimes not possible to even cut them off. Think your boss or family members. One of the most difficult times I had to draw a much needed boundary was with my father during a time where he needed my support. He was going through a difficult circumstance with something, and helping him would come at the expense of my mental health and well-being. I know because in the past we had been in similar situations, and I had been there and done that. This time around, I told him how much I loved him and believed in him, but that I couldn't support him in the way he was looking for. It broke my heart, but it needed to be done. It was confusing to my parents at first because they were expecting a different reaction from me, but eventually they understood. I did have to field calls from other concerned family members, and I'll be honest, I was afraid of their judgment initially, but when it came down to it, I didn't owe them any explanations. I didn't need anyone's approval. And looking back now, this boundary actually strengthened my relationship with my parents immensely. My father became more confident in his ability to navigate challenging circumstances because he persevered through this particular challenge, and that was wonderful for him. My parents were more respectful in approaching me for support moving forward, and I successfully navigated setting a much needed, hard for me, boundary that supported my well-being. I felt respected and heard, and that also brought us closer together. So now that we know what boundaries are, why they're important, why they can be difficult to navigate, can we take a minute to look at why they are so beautiful? As mentioned before, they're an expression of the love we have for ourselves. And any kind of love, especially self-love, is beautiful. When you honor your needs and your boundaries, you are less likely to do things that will make you feel angry or resentful. You will meet your needs. You will feel safe and happy. That is amazing. Second, it promotes healthier relationships with others. Imagine how interactions would be if people were on the same page about things. For example, if your boss, who is an open book and probably an oversharer by your standards, is aware and respects that you are reserved and would like to keep your private and work life separate, if that boss stops asking probing questions about your family life, would you be more open and comfortable at work? If your friends didn't keep showing up late for your planned dinners, would you be less irritable or more eager to have future dates with them? Also, think about, would you want to know if you were doing something that was uncomfortable to someone else? Chances are you would. And I bet that people that love you feel the same way about honoring how you want to be treated. Being upfront with your boundaries supports less conflict and improved communication. Others know what to expect in their relationship with you because you've modeled how you wish to be treated and what is important to you. If for whatever reason your boundaries are not honored, then it also sets the stage for honest communication to address this. Boundaries are also great for relationships because if you're operating from a place that's in alignment with your boundaries, you're less likely to be angry or resentful. And so therefore, you're going to be showing up to relationships happier and bringing that happy energy into your dynamic with another person. And lastly, boundaries improve relationships because they improve understanding between one another. When you are honoring your boundaries from a place of self-awareness, meaning you've done the work to know what you want in a relationship and you have articulated that, you're also more open to the fact that other people also have boundaries and parameters that they wish to be supported with. And that just creates an environment of mutual understanding and collaboration. So my friends, I hope that I've convinced you that the benefits of having boundaries in your life outweighs the discomfort that may go into setting them and maintaining them. Before I sign off, I will leave you with some things to consider if you're just getting comfortable with setting boundaries. First, start with setting boundaries that aren't going to be overly contentious. Even these small boundaries can create huge positive shifts in your life. Not to mention that by setting these boundaries successfully, you'll gain the confidence to tackle some of the bigger ones over time. Boundary setting is like lifting weights. It gets easier the more often you do it. 2, setting boundaries will be the most difficult with people that were familiar with the quote-unquote old you. And I'd like to remind you that you can do hard things. As new people come into your life, they will only know the quote-unquote new you with boundaries. And so your boundaries will likely become non-issues to them. 3rd, setting boundaries is an expression of self-love. And when done with that intention, it can be done in a loving way. You don't have to be harsh, assertive, or mean to set or enforce a boundary. They can be set gently and with love. 4, no is a complete sentence. You don't ever need to provide an explanation or rationale for your boundary. Boundaries are about what is comfortable for you. Either something is or it isn't. Full stop. And lastly, you can't control others' reactions to your boundaries. Your boundaries are about you and your needs. It is your responsibility to yourself. Other people's reactions to your boundaries are their issue. Boundaries is a big and meaty topic, and we will definitely be having more chats about this in the future because it comes up again and again, and it is so important. And of course, I do work one-on-one with clients on this, so if this is an area that you want personalized support in, I'd be happy to explore this further with you in a free discovery call. Before we wrap this up, I want you to take what you've learned from this chat to identify an area in your life that could benefit from a stronger boundary, and I want you to do something about it. Remember that it doesn't have to be a big, earth-shattering boundary. Start small and work your way up. Oh, and I should probably also tell you that when done right, boundaries feel so great that you'll want to keep adding more and more. They make you feel peace, happy, in control, in alignment, more fulfilled. They help you prioritize, give you laser focus, increase your productivity, and improve the depth of your relationships. I'd love to hear which boundary you landed on. DM me on Instagram or shoot me a quick email. My contact information is in the episode description. Till next time, folks, it's been great chatting with you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the AnitaCHAT podcast. If you haven't taken a minute to leave a review, I would absolutely love to hear from you. All you need to do is to search for the show, click your star rating, and type in a few words. Also, if there's a specific topic you'd like to see covered in this podcast, if you'd like me to be your coach, or if you want to just chat, feel free to send me an email or shoot me a message through my IG, which you'll find in the show notes. The show notes will also contain any links to the freebies that were referenced in this episode. Until next time, friends, it's been great chatting with you.